Yiboneh, Yiboneh Hamikdash, Yitzion, Yitzion, Yitzion Temaneh. Yiboneh, Yiboneh, Yiboneh Hamikdash, Yitzion, Yitzion, Yitzion Temaneh. Neshama shir chadash.
Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Welcome. I'm going to say welcome back. How can I say welcome back to the Yiboneh Beit Midrash? This is our very first time recording in our new center. We are not open yet. We are going to open on Hanukkah, but we have, Baruch Hashem, a very nice crowd here. And as you know, we are raising funds to keep this, not just to keep going, first of all, for the renovations. So down below there is a link to make contributions. But more than that, what I really want you to do is go down into the link, and you'll find the Hebrew source sheets, a link, and I want you to follow along. And we always deal with fundamental concepts in Yahadut, in Judaism. And we're in Parashat Vayeitzei. We're going to deal with chapter 28, if I'm not mistaken, verse 20. Okay, so I'll read it in English and in Hebrew. I'm going to point certain things out. Things that the Yakar will be, let's say, bothered by. It says in chapter 28 of Genesis, verse 20, and Jacob uttered a vow, right? V'yidar Yaakov neder lemor, saying, Im yeh Elokim imadi, if God will be with me. Now this, then he will guard me on this way. Is he having a existential faith issue? What do you mean? God already promised him. I'm going to be with you. So where does this come from, where he asked this question, if God will be with me and he will guard me on the way? Ushmarani b'derech hazeh. Then he says, Asher anochi holech, right? God's going to guard me on the way everywhere I go. Wherever I go, God's going to guard me. V'noson li lechem lechol, that God should give me bread to eat, ubegid lilbosh, and clothing to wear. Okay, the Yakar is not happy. Why doesn't it just say to give me bread and clothing? What do you think? I'm going to eat the clothing and I'm going to wear the bread? So, without getting too far ahead of ourselves, see, we said we're in verse 20. If you go to verse 15, it's just 5 verses before. God actually says, behold, I am with you. Hine anochi imoch. Right? And I'm going to guard you wherever you go. Ushmarticha b'chol asher telech. Everywhere you go, I'm going to guard you. So where is it 5 verses later? He's asking this question, if God will be with me. So this is what we're going to deal with. Fundamentals of faith. And wait till you hear this. In verse 15, God says, I'm going to bring you back to the land. I will restore you to the land. In Hebrew, V'hashivoticha el ha'adamah. I'm going to bring you back to where? Eretz Yisrael, to the land of Israel. Well, Hazot, this land. Ki lo azavcha ad asher im asiti et asher dibarti loch. Right? I'm not going to forsake you. I'm not going to abandon you until I have accomplished and finished everything that I spoke to you about already. Now, it is interesting if you look in. All right, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's go to the Yakar. The Yakar says these words. Right? We're in the middle of the page. Kuf Lamed Chet. That's 138. Im yeh Elokim imadi. This is the pasuk. If God will be with me, this is Yaakov speaking. And right away the Yakar says, Chalila v'chas, right? God forbid. Chalila lomar shahayi Yaakov mesupak b'havtachat Hashem yisbrach. There's no way that Yaakov had any doubts, right? God forbid Yaakov had any doubts in his faith that Hashem would fulfill his promises. Of course he would. Ki kavar amar lo Elokim, because already in verse 15, which we saw, God says, V'hine anochi imach, I'm going to be with you. Ushmarticha b'chol asher telech. I'm going to be everywhere you go. I'm going to be with you. Ela biur ha'inyan. So what is really going on? The Yakar is saying this is what's happening. Ready? Usually I say drum roll, please, this time, but we're not yet there. Let's see in a second. Sheyakov lo bikesh klal al shmirat haguf. And I know it's hard to see because we did see those words about bread to eat and clothing to wear. But according to the Yakar, that's not the pshat here. Right now we're dealing with a concept that Yaakov is not asking for any earthly, physical, bodily guarding. Shekavar huftach bo, because God already promised him in verse 15, I'm going to take care of you. What was Yaakov asking then? Ela bikesh akshav, what was he requesting now? What was he seeking now? Al shmirat hanefesh min hachet. Yaakov wanted God to guard him, or he wanted assistance from God to guard him, to guard his soul, to guard his nefesh from sin. Now the Yakar says, Va'ed al zeh, as either proof, testimony regarding this idea, Ki haftachat Hashem yizbarach ne'emar. See, already in verse 15, God said, Ushmarticha b'kol asher telech. I will guard you. I will protect you wherever you go. And Yaakov responds. That was verse 15. Yaakov responds in verse 20. Ushmarani b'derech hazeh asher anochi holech. Now we all know Hebrew, and most of us don't speak Hebrew properly. But you don't need to say asher anochi or ani holech. It's good enough to say, as he says, V'hayla lomar. It could have just been said, Ushmarani b'kol asher elech. The word elech is equivalent to ani holech. And God is actually, by the way, very chas. He's very concerned and has pity on Jewish people's money. Yeah, he doesn't want us to waste money. And believe it or not, a Sefer Torah is a very expensive item. And the ink is expensive. So wherever you can shorten it and make it even grammatically correct, you certainly would. So it could have said, as the Yakar points out, that you could have said, and you will guard me everywhere that I go, b'kol asher elech. That is a few letters shorter, quite a few. But the word anochi is in there. Okay, he says, Gam milat anochi is miyuteret lagamre. Not only that, right? You don't even need the word. You don't even need the word anochi. All you needed to have said was, like he said, Ushmarani b'kol asher elech. So Kadosh Baruch Hu Omer, what did God say back to him? Actually, in verse 25, originally he said to him, "V'hashivoticha el ha'adama." I'm going to bring you back to this land, to the land. Now, there's going to be I'm going to make this point. When God says in verse 15, I'm going to bring you to the land, Tola Hashava V'Hashem Yisrach. This concept of returning to the land, that's Hashem's doing. God says, I'm going to be the one who returns you. But Yaakov says also in verse 21, Vishavti b'shalom el beis avi. I want to return in peace. Now this idea of peace, if we look at Rashi real quick in source through number 3, Rashi says, what does it mean I'm going to return in peace? I'm going to return perfect from sin. In other words, sinless. If I did any sins, I will have done tshuva, I will have found atonement, I will be shalem min hachet. I will be complete without sin. That's what it means according to, well, let's see. According to the Yakar, Yaakov's response was, V'shavti b'shalom el beis avi. He's telling us this is Tola Hashava Be'atzmo, that it's Yaakov's response. Yaakov's returning. His tshuva is on him. In other words, we all believe in free will, right? Free will is the greatest gift that God gave us. That's what separates us from even the angels, from the animals, from all of existence. It's so important that we're going to discuss it a little bit right now. So there's going to be these two, I think, major shifts. One is the return to the land. That's like a tshuva, believe it or not. How many people come back and do tshuva automatically from just smelling the stones of Yerushalayim, of Eretz Yisrael, right? Just smelling it, just walking on it. You can feel the electricity go up through your spine. Nachon, right? And so that's up to us. And I'm sorry, just the return, that's going to be Hashem's doing. But there's tshuva, there's working on our character, there's doing Torah and mitzvahs, which we will see. That is your Bechirat Chofshi. That's going to be entirely up to you. And we're going to see this within dialogue that Hashem has with Yaakov. That God is saying, I'm going to return you to the land, and Yaakov is saying, I'm going to return to my father's house, which is going to be symbolic as we see. Just take one more look at Rashi on verse 28-21. It says, and if I return in peace to my father's house, Rashi says, as God said to me, I'll restore you to the land, just as God says, I'm going to bring you to the land in peace. That's what Yaakov's saying. I'm going to come back to my father's house, perfect from sin. Now there is another caveat here, that he will not learn the ways of Lavan. He won't learn the ways of the Rishonim. That's why it's very important to choose your friends. Choose your friends wisely. So Yaakov responds, Vishavti b'shalom el beis avi, in verse 21, which is Tola hashava biatzmo. This idea of personal tshuva. This is about returning to your own father's house. And what does Hashem say to him? El ha'adamah. I'm going to bring you back to the land. The land. The Yaakov says, right? So God's saying, I'm going to bring you back to the land. But Yaakov says, El beis avi, to my father's house. Now, we have different anomalies, we have different changes between the back and forth. He says, Mikol hashinoyim elu, nochal lilmod. Because of the different changes in the conversation, the different anomalies, you can actually learn that what? As Meir was explaining, that what? That Sheyakov lo bikesh ki'im al shmirat hanefesh min hachet. If that's not spiritual, what is? To guard yourself against sin, not to sully your neshama. Yaakov actually, we're going to learn from all these different changes that Yaakov was not going to be asking for anything physical. I know we read he wants to make sure he's going to have bread to eat and clothing to wear. We're going to discuss that. But here, he's making the point that whatever Yaakov was asking was strictly about his soul staying clean from sin. This is the greatest gift that we have, which is free will. And it's the only, right? Everything is in the hands of heaven except Yirat Hashemayim, except Yirat Hashem. So this is the free will. That all we're discussing here when it comes to free will, anything that is, it's all dependent on the free will of man to stay away from sin. V'tzari gam ezer elokai. Now the truth is, v'tzari gam ezer elokai. The Gemara Kedushin says there's no way that a human being can actually overcome his Yetzer Hara without the help of Hashem. I don't know if anybody knows about the 12-step programs and Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, but one of their principles is there's no way to get help from some of the deepest hurts and addictions except through the help of God. Well, guess where they got it from? They got it from us. The Gemara Kedushin says there's no way out. In fact, what you think you're so strong, people are in prison. You know they always get help. Someone sends a cake with a little file, right? You need help from the outside. What about those old westerns? The guy comes on a horse and a chain, and he pulls the whole wall down by attaching it to the saragim on the outside. You always need help from the outside. You need help from Hashem. Don't be so arrogant to think you can overcome the Yetzer Hara without Hashem's help. Shekain hitpalel David, even Dovid HaMelech in 119. Where is it on the sheet? Number 4, 119:37. Dovid HaMelech prays to God, turn away my eyes from seeing vanity. With your ways, sustain me. Ha'aver einai miraot shav. This is vanity. I need your help to guide me, to make sure that I'm looking at the right things, paying attention to the right things. Okay? So that was David's prayer. Help from heaven. Lekach hizkir b'shmir taguf. Now, there is a statement that is mentioning regarding, well, let's just put it like this. If we're talking about vanities, that is, on a certain level, guarding against physical stuff. So in verse 15, where God tells him, Ushmarticha b'kol asher telech, I will guard you everywhere you go. What's the word kol? Kol asher telech. His kirlashim kol. Kol means everywhere. Ki kol hadrachim b'cheska sakana. When you go, and even if you go on Emek Rafayim, whatever street you want to go, Tel Aviv, there's nothing to talk about. But everywhere you go, there's mamish sakana. V'halichato b'drachim rabim. I'm not sure how to exactly explain this. It could mean his way. Anybody human's way is to go. There's so many opportunities, left, right, center, up, down, so many ways. So when you're going, it's sakana, it's dangerous because there's so many opportunities. Amnam haderech hatov, but when it comes to choosing the right path, when it comes to doing right, eino kim echad. There's only one path. And what path is that? Al kein amar ushmarani b'derech hazeh. In verse 20, where this is Yaakov speaking actually, right? Yaakov took this vow, that if God will be with me, he's going to guard me on the way. He will guard me on the way. When it says hazeh, a lot of times in the Torah, the word hazeh means like you're pointing with a finger. The hazeh means this, like specifically. Kamara be'etzba al eze derech miyuchad asher yomar olav kihu zeh. It's as if there's like, he's showing him with a finger, pointing with a finger, which unique, special way that he's talking about. And what is that? Hu derech Hashem b'Torah u'mitzvahs. It's the way of God, of the way. You heard of TM? TM? They call it transcendental meditation. It's not transcendental meditation. It's Torah and mitzvahs. Okay? TM. Ki kavar amar, it already says in verse 16 in our Parsha, Achein yesh Hashem b'makam hazeh. When Yaakov woke up, look in number 5. It's 28:16. Yaakov awakened from his sleep, and he knew. He says, indeed, the Lord is in this place. Achein yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh, ki misham teitzei Torah. I'm going to surprise you with something. Mount Moriah is only a kilometer from here. Whatever, give or take a few feet. Mount Sinai is where we received the Torah. That's where the Torah came in. Yeah, that's what I want to say. That there is an opinion that we were transported at Mount Sinai to Mount Moriah. In fact, Mount Sinai has many names, and one of those names is Mount Moriah. So when we hear these words, Ki misham teitzei Torah, we're talking about Jerusalem, right? Ki mitzion teitzei soira. So of course it's Jerusalem, Zion. But anyway, it says, Al ken amar hazeh, as if he's pointing. Kamara be'etzba al derech shehulafanav. And that's where he was. When he woke up from his dream, he's right there where he fell asleep, on Mount Moriah. As if he pointed with a finger in front of him, that this is Beis Elokim, Beis El, asher mimenu dorchim derech slula lelech b'darchei Hashem Yisbrach. So basically, this is not just the house of God, but from it, there will be people who will tread in like a paved, easy way to traverse the ways of God. God gave us an instruction manual. Right? It's not that hard. It might be complicated, but it's not that hard. Okay? Remember, in Gemara Kedushin, where it says that God gave the Yetzer Hara, but He created the tavlin, He created the cure before. He always creates the cure before He creates the problem. The problem is a test, but He already creates the solution. The solution was the Torah was created before the world. Before the world came into being, we had the Torah. Then he created the world. Call that the problem, whatever you want to call it. But basically, we're talking about the free will of man. That the way of going in the Torah path is all dependent on you choosing it. Okay? Nobody can force it to you. You have to choose it. Akin hosif milad. Remember we said what the word anochi was. Just say, Elech, I will go, as opposed to ani holech. So anochi, where it says in Asher anochi holech, ki bi taloy davar. Anochi, that's me. There's nothing bigger than me than anochi, right? Anochi means me. It's all about me. Ki bi taloy hadavar b'tziruf ha'ezer elokai asher olav amar ushmareni. That this whole thing is dependent on a combination, a partnership that we have with God. We cannot do it without God, but it's dependent on us. L'chach amar v'shavti b'shalom. In verse 21, Yaakov himself said, so if I return in peace, that was shalem min achet. That means he's complete and already complete tshuva from sin, or he's sinless. V'tola hashava be'atzmo. That's totally dependent on him with his free will, as the Yakar says, ki adavar taloi b'chirato ka'amor. Now, what about the idea of shmirat haguf? Shmirat haguf v'hashivoticha el hadaman. Verse 15. God says He's going to bring us back to the land physically. We're sitting here. This is like the biggest. How can you not believe in God? I don't understand. I honestly don't understand. Like in front of our very eyes, God made promises and He fulfills them. And He says He's going to bring us back. And look at us. Many of us, I can't speak for all of us, many of us were not as religious as we are today. Some of us may not have been religious at all. And look at us. We're all sitting in the land where God had promised to bring us back. And this is a fulfillment of the promise. Ki Eretz Yisrael einei Hashem dorish bo tamid. God's eye, this is the pupil of God's eyes. He's constantly involved with the hashgacha. He's observing and he's involved constantly with the land of Israel. Al ken biyoter hu tzarik shmira b'chutz la'aretz mi ba'aretz. Therefore, by the way, if God forbid you have to leave, unless it's a mitzvah, then you need extra guarding when you go outside the land. As we have experienced recently, we really do have and feel the hashgacha. Unfortunately, many people have gotten hurt running to a mikvah. Some people have gotten hurt from the shrapnel. And let's just leave it at that. There's miracles upon miracles that we are witnessing with our very own eyes. So in Eretz Yisrael, there's a special shmirah, and in outside the land, less so. You need extra shmirah there. And that's where Yaakov was on his way out of the land. Lafikek lo hutrach haftacha ki'im shiashivu el ha'adama l'Eretz Yisrael. So what was he wanting a promise? He was looking towards, he needed more assurance that he would return to the land of Israel, l'Eretz Yisrael. Ukevo el ha'adama harehu nishmar memela. Because he knew when he got back to here, back to the land of Israel, that the shmirah would come back like automatically. It's like a default. It's just when he's outside the land, he really felt he needed that extra shmirah. Aval, but when it comes to shmirah min hachet, who's you expect God? I will tell you a little secret though. But in the meantime, when it comes to shmirah, guarding from sin, Shalo Yilmad Midarche Lavan. He wanted to make sure that he didn't learn from evil people like Lavan. Lav Dafka Lavan, not only Lavan, Sharei Afilu Hakanani, even the Canaanites, the Philistines or the Palestinians, whatever you want to call them, they were Yoshev Haaretz. They dwelt in the land. Lo Tov Asa Ba'amav. They didn't treat Yaakov's family well. Already back then. Maybe call it the longest hatred. I don't know. Yesh lechu shelo yilmad gam midarchei amori. Not only that Yaakov's family should not learn from the Amorites who were here. Al kein amar el beis avi. Therefore it says he wanted to return back to his father's house. Ki az yenatzel min chashash zeh. This is more of a spiritual yearning of clinging to the tradition of your fathers. Shalo Yilmad Midarche Harishayim. and not to learn from the ways of the evil people. So this last piece really made a difference between Hashem's talking to Yaakov, I'm going to return you physically to the land. That's true. But also, Yaakov requests to come back to his father's house in peace, which means in peace, mama, shalem. Shalem with his soul. That he's going to return back to Israel, true, physically, as God promised, but he wants to be guarded against sin. And it's very important not to learn from evil people. So this is part of the protection, what he was praying for. Now the next piece is V'hitil bein hadvekim tanai. Now the way I understand it is towards the end of verse 20 and the beginning of verse 21, there's something stuck in between. And those words are V'nosen li lechem lechol ubeged lilbosh. Right? That he's asking to God to give him bread to eat and a garment to wear. So if you just look at verse 20 and then 21, you see those few words are kind of strange. In 20, God is asking, he's making a vow, if God be with me, he's going to guard me on the way which I'm going. Let's just skip the next few words for a second. And behold, and if I return in peace to my father's home. This is all part of some kind of conversation, neder. But we're going to stick these words in. That's what literally when it says, V'hitil bein hadvekim tanai. He's sticking in this condition in the middle of two things that really should be together. Dvekim. And those words are that God should give me the bread to eat and the garments to wear. So the Yakar says, Ki hashmira min hachet. Remember, his whole thesis is, this is all about Yaakov praying not to be a sinner and to be shalem min hachet. Nothing to do with any physical, but just for a soul, spiritual idea. That he says that this guarding from sin, that he wanted to be guarded from sin, that he shouldn't learn from these evil people around him. That's one idea. V'yesh od derech acher, there's another way to look at it. Asher apiv yekol riv v'kol naga, v'hu oisher. So, I think they say, it says on the government money in America, in God we trust. So that's like a reminder, stay on the right path. But he says that it's very easy to get involved in arguments and calamities because of wealth, right? I mean, I've seen people go crazy over money, right? Getting into arguments, money, whatever it is. So this is like the worst thing, money. And he says, Ma'aver einei ba'alav, it blinds the people that own, this wealth. Umonei sa'adam min derech hayoshar, and it actually prevents people from doing the right thing. Ki lo lechinam bikei Shlomo v'yomer. It was not for nothing that King Solomon, the wisest man of all times, in Proverbs chapter 30, verse 8, the first part it says, distance falsehood and a lying word from me. But this is the important part, he says. King Solomon says, give me neither poverty nor wealth. Well, what am I? If I'm not rich, I'm not poor, I guess I'm just a Benoni. Provide me with my allotted bread. Reish va'oisher al titein li, right? Give me neither poverty nor wealth. Hatrifeni lechem chuki. Provide me with my allotted bread. Al ken amar gam Yaakov. Therefore, what was Yaakov also saying? Not just King David. King David obviously got it from Yaakov, but Yaakov was also saying, Sheyimna ehu Hashem min zahav v'rav paninim. That you should prevent me from having, an abundant amount of gold or a lot of expensive gems, stones. Eliyitain lo lechem kedei le'echol ubegid kedei lubosh. But rather, what should God give him? Simply bread, like his allotted bread in order to eat, and clothing in order to wear. Now, what are these things called? The word hechrechi means necessities, things that you need to live, and mutarot are excessive luxuries. So he says, Well, obviously, lechem, bread, and clothing is a necessity. V'lo yitein lo mutaros. King Solomon, Yaakov, they were not looking for luxuries, just what they needed. So according to the Yakar, now we're actually going to understand why it says, give me bread to eat and clothing to wear. We didn't need to say that, just say, give me bread and clothing. What it could have just said, v'noson li lechem v'beged, just give me bread and clothing. What, it might have come upon your man. This is like the most rhetorical question, right? You think it might have come upon someone's mind? That they're actually going to wear bread, v'yochel habeged, they're going to eat their clothing? Of course not. That the pasuk has to go out of its way to tell you the bread is for eating and the clothes is for wearing. You don't need that, again, right? It's unnecessary. But rather, what did God want? He wanted to limit this, and therefore also Yaakov and King David. That he shouldn't give him more bread than he needs to eat in a day. What do I need to amass a whole bunch of bread for? Ubeged yoter mikadei tsarko lilbosh. Or what do I need more clothing than I'm going to wear? V'al yedei shelo yelo ki'im kadei tsarko yenatzel min hachet. Remember we said money is what causes a lot of problem? Therefore, if I only need what right? V'al yedei shelo yelo ki'im, all he wanted was enough to save himself from sin, meaning a modest amount, not an excessive amount. That's why it says right away in verse 21, V'shavti b'shalom el beis avi, that I want to go back, I want to return to my father's house in peace. Remember, shalom is shalem min hachet. Ki b'tnoi zeh ochel l'shuv uchal l'shuv b'shalom. It's only on this condition, that I'm not too rich, not too poor, just very modest, then I will be able to return in peace, meaning sin-free, shalem min hachet, just like Rashi explained. And that brought the whole thing together, I hope, and we understand it. So, look, there are Jews, Baruch Hashem, who have plenty of money. And I know many are very modest, and they really, they live a modest lifestyle, and they give a lot of tzedakah. And I think that's very praiseworthy. On the other hand, we do know, probably, like anybody else, any other peoples, we have sinners, amongst us, should I say, and that I don't know too many. I honestly do not know too many Jews. I know they're out there. I have a feeling, but I don't know too many Jews who are not modest, who are extremely wealthy and give a lot of tzedakah. And so, for you, I'm talking. Think about Yiboneh, and they see the dedication list, right? So, look, this was an opportunity to really delve into what we call the foundations of Judaism, how we live our lives with Emunah, right? And we're not excessive. We use our resources. We're happy to use our resources for mitzvahs. And Baruch Hashem, we have a community here, and every Thursday night, we're going to be here. And for you, keep coming back, right? It works if you work it, as they say. No, seriously, that we'll be here next Thursday night, Bezrat Hashem, and Hanukkah time, Bezrat Hashem, we will have a Hanukkah party and celebration. It's coming up around the corner. So we wish everyone not just a good Shabbat Shalom, but a happy life and a meaningful life. And we'll see you next week.
Shir shir chadyash